It's been a hell of a road trip with this past 4 years. Just straight up struggle from the get-go. Building a wall and, getting rid of all the immigrants. Just a lot of things that would create the more division.
Yeah, we living at the 978.
My name is Estarlyn Hiraldo, and this is my vote, my reality. Lawrence is like 90% Hispanic population. It's kind of a low income community, and it's considered an immigrant city where a lot of people are not yet U.S. citizens, which affects a lot like the political climate and the amount of people that can actually vote, especially for a lot of immigrants that are just considered resident or might be undocumented. They don't necessarily have a voice in the American voting system the way that U.S. citizens do. I would say it's mostly democratic, but at the same time, there is a conflict with nearby towns. They have predominantly more conservative views, therefore they have disproportionately more voters than what we have in my city. A lot of towns are different. Some towns are a little bit more liberal, others are a little bit more conservative, but we kind of just sit kind of in the middle of Massachusetts in a very awkward spot. I myself migrated to the United States. I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic till I was 10 years old, and then I came here with my family. Having lived here so many years and growing up and learning about how much of this modernity really does come at a cost. This liberty, this freedom that we speak of, it doesn't mean the same thing for every group or every person. For me, being able to vote means everything. I know that not everyone has this privilege, and I wish everyone had this privilege to vote, speak their voice. But I know that by voting, I'm being a voice for those that can't vote. I'm a U.S. citizen. I have dual citizenship, but at the same time, I had some subtle fear of even not being accepted in this country anymore, right? We tend to look at being a citizen as the only thing that's, I guess appropriate. We have to change that kind of stigma. Everyone in this country contributes in some way or another. This is a community thing, right? Like a country doesn't run itself by only one group of people. I recently just studied abroad this past semester, even though it got cut short because of the pandemic, of course, but visiting other countries, and I was kind of surprised and shocked at how I was received for being identified as an American, and the kind of stereotypes and the weird looks that came with that, right? It makes me feel some type of way. It makes me almost feel disappointed and not prideful in being American,
Yo, remember when I used to wake up in the middle of the night?
I think in this election, whoever ends up being in the front lines and leading our country, they need to be someone that's accountable, will hold themselves accountable, and also have a compassionate and humble heart, so that they can gain people's trust and show that they are holding themselves responsible for bringing about these changes that we need in our society. Someone that does not put their ego before the people, having empathy for the common good, the well-being of all in society, not just a group or two. Being a true active citizen requires being active, being responsible, and I think over the past 4 years, our American citizenship, because of our our presidency and the leadership that we've had, it's shown the opposite of pride, the opposite of responsibility and accountability. More like feeling shame and disappointment and a lot of division, just a lot of social conflict. It's corrupted my perception of myself, and it has made me question my nationality, and where do I stand in between all of this. I think in general the US can improve by focusing more on community-led projects and programs that allow the public to have a little bit more freedom and say in what they want in their local governments, and really gets them involved in what kind of policies are being passed and just the political process in general. Making these decisions will prompt more leaders in the communities and more advocates to get involved, to be upfront, with the community they're serving. And also, because they're coming from those same communities, they understand those struggles. They understand the hardships and those patterns that persist in the system, right? And I think that's just a more direct way of impacting people's lives in a positive way. We have people that recognize that the system we have now is, a lot of times built to confine people, restrict them, sometimes even punish them, and in ways that is far off, very controlling, and doesn't give off the same opportunities for everyone. And we need to focus more on sustainability and rehabilitation and how we're going to move forward as a society. Recognize our areas of growth and, also the mistakes and the errors we've made and how we can improve on those. To have more of a growth mindset, right? And be more flexible and understanding with one another. For me personally, I think the environmental crisis is hands down the most important, even with Black Lives Matter going on, and the economy on the other hand, thinking of student debt going forward. That's another thing that I think is incredibly important that my generation has learned of the, kind of the struggles from. But I think climate change is a huge issue that clearly President Trump hasn't handled in the most appropriate way or mature way at all, completely disregarding it if you ask me, because this planet is dying, and as sad as that is and heartbreaking, we can't just let that happen, because it ultimately affects our health and our well-being and the planet, and I think that's gonna heavily impact me in my lifespan. But I keep thinking about how that's going to affect future generations, my future family, and the families of others. What kind of planet do we want to leave behind for future generations? We are definitely seeing some of the health impacts today, but I think we cannot even imagine to what extent those might grow and extend if we keep going at this rate and not really, taking this climate change issue seriously, and finding ways to, fund for more sustainable and renewable energy sources and recycling programs and, just environmental efficiency and how we deal with all the waste that we create. That's what I would say. I always like giving a voice to those that are not heard, because I myself, in my experience, whether it's been throughout my education or simply just living in a low-income city like this, I know what it feels like to not have a voice. When I didn't even know how to speak the language, I know what it's like to not be heard and not to feel like you're not valued or respected for your identity, from where you're coming from. We in the United States are a country of immigrants, right? Historically speaking. And we all come from various different places and have totally different backgrounds. At the same time, I think that's a privilege. I also think of using my vote to represent Gen Z. That's another group that I feel like doesn't get much respect, especially when it comes to the age requirements with the voting policies. Being able to vote now is a representation of Gen Z and what my generation is capable of doing at the core. And I really hope that it inspires Gen Zers to stand up and recognize that their voice hasn't been respected or recognized before. They've been told as if they didn't have a place in this system, when we do. And I think this is our time to let our voice speak for itself.